Imagine some teenager strolling up your driveway, pointing at your motorcycle, and saying, I'll take that one. 'Cause his mom, the HOA power queen, told him it's yours to give. What would you even do? That morning was slow and honey warm. The kind of quiet where sprinklers tick and birds argue about nothing in the Oaks. I had coffee cooling in my hand and a rag over my shoulder, staring at the soft chrome curve of my Harley under the shade. It's not just a bike to me. It's sweat and Saturdays and 100 tiny fixes. It's a promise I made after my brother passed ride for both of us when the road is good. Then this kid, 16, maybe steps onto my driveway like he owns the concrete. Straight shoulders, new sneakers, chin tilted like a question mark that learned to be rude. I'll take that one, he says, pointing at the Harley. I blinked, laughed, thought it was a prank. You're joking. Right, no, he answers, all starch and confidence. Mom said you were giving it to me. She talked to the HOA. I followed the line of his finger to the cul-de-sac. And there she was, Karen. Sunglasses like armor. Arms folded. That tight smile that says she already wrote the ending and you're just here to act it out. She gave me a little parade wave. We are not friends. You've got to be confused, I told the kid. He frowned. The way teens do when a vending machine eats their dollar. She said you don't even ride it. And the noise is a problem. The air in my chest turned hard. I ride every weekend, I said. Slow and clean. I maintain it. I paid for it. That's my motorcycle. From the sidewalk, Karen called out. Be neighborly, would you? It's an eyesore. And your, lifestyle noise has been disruptive. A gift would make things right. By gift, you mean to your son, I said. She shrugged, like that was the most obvious thing in the world. He's turning 17 in late May. It would be perfect. Absolutely not. Her smile fell off, and the HOA voice came out sharp. Official. A little hungry. If you won't cooperate, I'll escalate. I'd heard that word for years in this neighborhood, but it hits different when it's pointed at you like a spear. Escalate. Okay? I set my coffee down and told the kid we were done. He stomped off, shooting me a look like I'd ruined his birthday. Karen lingered just long enough to say, You'll regret this. Soft as a threat and sweet as spoiled milk. Days passed. I rode out to the lake and back, wind in my ears, thinking maybe that was that. Saturday afternoon. I parked the Harley at its spot beside the garage, under the old live oak, helmet off, gloves in the pocket. Then, the sirens. 2 cruisers slid into the street like the world had tilted. Lights dancing, doors opening. Officers stepping out with that practice calm that means something messy is about to be cleaned up. Sir, one said, please step away from the motorcycle. Excuse me, step away. Please. I lifted both hands, moved back, tried not to laugh from shock. Is there a problem? We received a report of stolen property. A local resident says you unlawfully took possession of a motorcycle promised to her minor son. I stared. That's my motorcycle. Title and registration are in my office. Karen arrived exactly on cue. Son at her shoulder like a shadow in training. There it is, she announced, pointing. He promised to give it to my son and then reneged. That's theft. Right. One officer kept his eyes on me, the other flipped a notebook. Proof of ownership. In a file drawer. I said. Desk. Top drawer. Manila folder, labeled bike. Keys on a hook near the door. You can stay where you are, he said, not unkindly. We'll get it with your consent. I nodded. They went inside. Karen stepped closer. Voice sugar-coated. You could have done the right thing. Now the neighborhood will know what kind of man you are. I didn't bite. You learn. Through service and mistakes, and a few hard winters. That sometimes the strongest move is to let the facts arrive. The officers came back in a minute that felt like an hour. Documents in hand. One studied the papers, looked at the VIN, and sighed. It's his, he said. Clean title. Karen's son kicked at the curb. This isn't fair. He said I could have it. I didn't. I said. Steady. Not even close. Karen adjusted her sunglasses, digging for a new angle. Maybe not theft. But he misled us. That's fraud. Even the officers were done. Ma'am, one said. This is a civil matter at best. We're clearing the call. Cruisers rolled away. The street exhaled. I thought maybe the storm had moved on. Then, 3 days later, a notice bloomed on my door like mold on bread. HOA violation, community disruption. Failure to uphold neighborhood courtesy standards. Excessive noise. It name-checked a verbal commitment I'd allegedly made. It cited hostile behavior. I laughed until I didn't. This wasn't about an engine or a misunderstanding. This was about control. About levers. About using the HOA like a crowbar. I called Mark. We served in the same veterans group years back. He went into public service. Steady as bedrock. Lay it out, he said. So I did. The kid in my driveway. The police. The letter. Mark was quiet for a beat. The good kind of quiet. All right. Write everything down. Dates. Times. Copies of whatever you've got. If you have video, even better. Bring it to me. I built a file, like a ship in a bottle. Doorbell cam. Oh yeah. Clear as the sun on a clean windshield. The kid stepping onto my property. Pointing at the bike. Saying the words out loud. I printed stills with timestamps. Burned clips to a drive. Pulled maintenance receipts. Photos from back when my brother and I first stripped the engine down to teach myself. I typed a statement, short sentences. No drama. I'm, you know, a little obsessive when something matters. I dropped the packet at Mark's office. He called after reviewing. She filed a complaint here, too, he said. More amused than surprised. Claims you promised her son the bike. We'll likely shunt this to mediation if it goes anywhere. You did the right thing documenting. I set the phone down and let normal air back into my lungs. But I knew Karen. She would not walk away from a stage with lights on it. HOA meeting night came around like a bill. I usually skip those. They make my blood pressure do little cartwheels. But I showed up early. Collared shirt. Papers in a folder. Coffee breath, tamed with a mint. The community room smelled like burned coffee and dry erase ink. Folding chairs in rows. People rustling. A corkboard with rules written in cheerful fonts that feel like a lie. Karen held court near the front. Posture tall. Hair sprayed so tight it might be bulletproof. Her son sat 2 chairs back. Arms crossed. The President Bill. Gray at the edges. Nice enough, tapped the mic. New business. Karen's hand shot up like a school kid, desperate for the purple crayon. I'd like to formally request action against Mr. Owens for failure to fulfill a verbal commitment, intentional disruption, and harassment of my minor son. Bill sighed barely. We're discussing the motorcycle, he said. She launched into it, voice trembling in that carefully curated way. He made a promise, she said. He's been erratic. The noise from his lifestyle has affected property values. I tried to mediate, but he became aggressive. Some neighbors nodded. Some frowned. Most just stared at the floor like it might open and save them. When she finally took a breath, Bill looked at me. Mr. Owen's eyes stood, opened my folder, and laid the first photo on the table. Your son on my driveway, I said, pointing at my motorcycle and saying, Mom said you'd give it to me. Time and date printed there. A ripple went through the room like wind in wheat. I slid over the police incident sheet. Officers verified the title is in my name. No theft. No warning. No citation. I placed the HOA notice next to my statement. The calm one I wrote and signed. These complaints arrived without anyone asking me for a single piece of paper. There's a pattern here, and it looks like harassment. I'm not claiming the board did wrong in total. I am saying someone misused the process. Karen half stood. He's twisting. Bill raised a palm. You had the floor. Please sit. He looked from the photos to the faces. We'll need to review this. Given what I'm seeing, I'm tabling the request for action. The meeting moved on. But the room had changed. People who barely glanced at me before now stole little. Looks like they were remembering other things. Paint disputes. Fence heights. Lawn-length letters with Karen's fingerprints on them. When the meeting adjourned, a neighbor I know as Mrs. Alvarez Yellow House with rose bushes. Sugar cookies at Christmas touched my arm. You're not the first, she whispered. If you ever need signatures, I'll bake coffee cake. I smiled, despite everything. Careful, I said. That's how revolutions start. Karen does not like being told no. The next week brought 2 new notes from the HOA. One scolded me for oil staining the driveway, never mind the drip pan and the spotless concrete. The other warned that garage activities were creating a workshop environment, inconsistent with neighborhood harmony. Harmony. That word does too much work around here. I emailed the board. No heat. Just a list. Here are the facts. Here are the photos. Here's my maintenance routine. Here's a decibel reading from an app taken at the sidewalk during a cold start. I wrote everything in plain language. Kept my heartbeat out of it. Karen replied from her board email in about 11 minutes. As if she'd been vibrating next to her laptop. Your materials are noted, she wrote. Nevertheless, the spirit of our covenants emphasizes courtesy. Your refusal to make amends has escalated tension. Consider a gesture. You mean my motorcycle? I typed. Then deleted because I'm trying to be a grown-up. Instead I wrote, I'm open to any request grounded in the actual rules. Please point me to the clause you're invoking. Silence from her. A short note from Bill arrived late that evening. We'll review. Please be patient. I could almost hear the headache in his typing. I wish the story paused there. But it didn't. A thick envelope landed in my mailbox 2 days later. Law firm letterhead that smelled like perfume and money. Inside a cease and desist, claiming I had emotionally misled a minor. That my retraction caused distress. That the appropriate remedy would be to surrender the motorcycle as restitution or face civil action. Attached were 2 witness statements, both written by Karen. On behalf of my son, declaring I'd made a promise in early spring, I called Mark. Read the language word for word. He chuckled softly. She's bluffing, he said. But a bluff in writing is still a club. We'll answer. Keep doing what you're doing. Document. Don't engage with her directly. We drafted a reply through a lawyer friend from my veterans group, Stevie. Sharp as a new blade, and gentler than she looks. Our letter was simple, the facts. The timeline. The law as Stevie understood it. A firm line about harassment. And a warning that we'd seek costs if they filed something frivolous. We attached the doorbell stills, the police sheet, and my notarized statement. No response. Not right away. In the quiet, I kept riding. On Saturday mornings, I'd ease the bike out and roll down the street like a respectful ghost. Low throttle. The engine just humming. Kids waved. One little boy covered his ears and laughed. Old Mr. Hargrove from the corner lifted 2 fingers in a salute he probably learned in the Navy a lifetime ago. The neighborhood felt like a town again. Not a battleground. And then, 'cause bullies hate steady, Karen tried a new angle. A courtesy patrol, she called it. Volunteers, mostly her friends, walked the block with clipboards, noting fences and flower beds and untidy trash cans. I stood in my garage and watched them peep over my hedge like meerkats. One even took a photo of my mailbox. I wanted to wave and ask if the flag was at the wrong angle for her aesthetic. But I didn't. I just logged it in my little spiral notebook, like a man making tea in a storm. Mrs. Alvarez knocked that afternoon. Coffee cake, warm under foil. There's people who've been scared of her for years, she said, handing me a plate. Maybe it's time we stop being scared. We sat at my picnic table, 2 forks and cinnamon in the air. She told me about the time Karen wrote her up for rose canes visible from the public way. About the service dog episode, when Karen tried to claim the vest clashed with community colors. Another neighbor, a young dad named TJ, wandered over with his toddler. He had a letter in his pocket about the basketball hoop on his driveway. Pretty soon, there were 6 of us. Then 10. Then more. Stories piled up. Small things. Dumb things. Petty things that add up to a kind of exhaustion. We could recall her. TJ said, "Isn't there a way to remove a board member? I'm not trying to blow up the HOA." I said, meaning it. I just want the rules to be the rules. Not a stick. Karen swings. Mrs. Alvarez poked the cake with her fork. Sometimes you gotta put down the stick. We started a petition. Not angry, okay? A little angry, but patient. We wrote in clear words that we believed Karen had misused the complaint process to pursue personal disputes. That we asked for her removal from the board and a review of the enforcement procedure. We walked door to door, smiling, explaining, promising it wasn't a war. Signatures gathered like raindrops on a window. Karen saw us. Of course. She stood in her driveway and filmed us with her phone like we were wildlife. She posted a community harmony memo on the board's website about element sewing division. It would have been funny if it wasn't so on the nose. A week later, another HOA meeting. Overflow crowd this time. People who never came showed up. Arms folded protectively across their chests. Bill looked like a man who slept in his car. He opened the agenda, and Karen raised her hand before he finished the first item. I moved to fine Mr. Owens for repeated noise violations and to compel him to relocate his motorcycle to off-site storage. I stood. Point of order, I said. Probably more formal than necessary, but hey. Sometimes, formality is a life preserver. What rule authorizes storage demands for a private vehicle parked in a driveway where vehicles are allowed? Karen's mouth flattened. The rule of courtesy. That's not a rule, I said, trying to keep my temper behind my teeth. That's an idea. Bill held up both hands. Let's not do this like a cage match, he said. Karen, we'll need citations to actual covenants. She rifled papers, found nothing, and pivoted. Then I moved to censure him for hostility. I took a breath. I'd like the minutes to reflect that I have not raised my voice or used any insulting language tonight. A chuckle ran around the room. Not at me, at the absurdity. Karen flicked a glance at her son. He looked small suddenly, slumped in his folding chair, as if the borrowed fury had gotten heavy. We also have a petition, Mrs. Alvarez said, standing like a small, brave lighthouse. She held up a stack of pages so thick the staple bent. Over half the neighborhood signed. We ask for removal of Karen from the board for misuse of the complaint process and ongoing harassment. Karen scoffed. This is a witch hunt. No, ma'am, TJ said, calm as a park bench. It's housekeeping. Bill rubbed his temples. We'll schedule a special session in 2 weeks. We'll verify signatures and allow comments from both sides. Until then, no new enforcement actions related to Mr. Owens's motorcycle. Meeting adjourned. Karen left without looking at me. Her son followed, eyes on his shoes. The crowd thinned. I helped stack chairs, because that's the kind of man I try to be when the world is loud. The quiet between that meeting and the special session felt like the silence before a summer storm, warm, thick. Everything waiting. I kept my head down. Went to work. Rode at sunrise when most folks were still dreaming. Waved at whoever was awake. Didn't answer Karen's posts on the community page. Even when she called me disruptive to harmony and suggested I consider other living arrangements. It's wild what some people will type with their name right there. Midweek. A kid on a bicycle coasted up to my open garage. Is that a Harley? He asked. Big-eyed. The way I used to be around engines. It is. I said. You want to hear it? He nodded, like I'd offered him the moon. I checked with his dad, who was trimming the hedge. He gave me a thumbs up. I fired the bike and let the engine settle into its heartbeat. The kid laughed into his hands. Karen appeared at her front window like a cuckoo clock on the hour. I shut it down fast. Sometimes grown-ups forget joy. I told the kid. Loud enough for the window. He grinned and rode away. Wheels whirring like a hummingbird. The special session landed on a Thursday night. The room was full. Air a little electric. Bill set ground rules, time limits. No interrupting. No personal attacks. Karen sat with a legal pad and a neat stack of folders. I brought my same folder. Dog-eared now. Pages softened from being handled. First, Bill said, we'll verify the petition. Then, we'll allow each side to speak. The secretary read names. She counted. She nodded. Verified. She said at last. Sufficient signatures for a recall vote. Karen stood. Before any vote, she said, I need to address the slander being spread about me. I followed the rules. I reported noise. I defended a minor who was emotionally manipulated. She looked directly at me. You made a promise you didn't keep. I stood. No, I didn't. I said. Simply. And I have video of your son on my driveway, saying you told him the motorcycle would be his. You are welcome to review it again. She opened her folder, pulled out a page, and tried another angle. This man's lifestyle is inconsistent with the character of this neighborhood. We exist for families and peace. Soft groans drifted. Mrs. Alvarez stood. He brings my trash cans up when my back hurts, she said. He fixes bikes for the kids. That's character. A dozen small nods. A few claps before Bill hushed them. Stevie, my lawyer friend, spoke next as a resident guest. I won't speak to law at length, she said. But I will say the enforcement process must be used to enforce actual rules, not to pursue personal outcomes. When one person dominates complaints, it raises concerns. Karen snorted. So we ignore violations because he's popular, Stevie shook her head. No. Ma'am. We ignore vendettas because they're corrosive. When my turn came, I didn't give a speech. I just laid out the timeline in short, boring sentences. The driveway approach, the police call, the letters, the petition. I let the dates in the paper do the heavy lifting. My voice shook once when I said my brother's name. I didn't plan to, but there it was. And I let it be. Bill asked for a motion. A board member named Priya, quiet up till now. Eyes like she misses, nothing spoke. I moved to remove Karen from the board for misuse of process and to appoint a temporary member until an election. Karen stood so fast, her chair scraped. This is illegal. You're all gonna regret this. Second. Another member said. Not looking at her. Bill swallowed. All in favor, hands rose. More than enough. Karen stared at her son. He chewed his lip and stared at the floor. For a flicker of a second, I saw a mom who wanted something good for her kid and lost the plot along the way. Then she looked at me, and the flicker went out. She gathered her folders, spine straight, and left. The room did not cheer. Nobody wanted to dance on a neighbor's front lawn. People just breathed, like a pressure had been lifted off the eaves. After, Bill approached me. I'm sorry, he said, looking older than last month. We should have caught this sooner. Thank you for fixing it, I said. He nodded. We'll be revising procedures. Fewer anonymous complaints. More verification before notices go out. And he met my eye. Decibels. Not feelings. Feels like a good bumper sticker, I said. You'd think that was the end. Almost. 2 days later, someone tried my side gate in the night. The latch rattled. The motion light flared. I stepped out the back door and froze, the shape bolted. Tennis shoes flashing. Gone over the fence like a jackrabbit. My heart skittered. I didn't chase. I just checked the garage bike safe, tools in place, and filed a report online. Neighbor's camera caught a blurry figure in a hoodie cutting across the yard. Could have been a kid on a dare. Could have been nothing. Could have been something. I slept light for a while, and then quiet. Real quiet. Not the kind where you're braced for the next shoe to drop, but the kind where the shoes are back on the mat where they belong. I mowed my yard. I tuned the carb. I brought Mrs. Alvarez's cans in and snuck her a cinnamon roll. I didn't bake as well as she does. I waved to TJ and his toddler. The basketball hoop stayed up. The world kept being messy and ordinary and fine. A month later, the board posted new enforcement guidelines. They were simple and sane. No more drive-by citations without a photo and a date. A complaint had to cite an actual clause. Warnings before fines. An appeal window that wasn't a joke. A cap on how many complaints one resident could file in a month without a review by the board. Nothing radical. Just fair. People noticed. You could feel it in the way neighbors lingered at the mailbox. The way they waved. In the way the page on the HOA site turned from a battlefield back into a corkboard lost cat. Bake sale. The pool is closed for cleaning on a sunny Tuesday. One evening, as the sky melted from peach to navy, Karen's son appeared at the end of my driveway. Hands in pockets. Shoulders small. I saw him and thought, here we go again. But he didn't come for the bike. He stopped at the sidewalk and cleared his throat. Hey, he said. I, wanted to say sorry. I thought. He glanced toward his house. I don't know what I thought. I was just excited. It was dumb. I shrugged one shoulder. Being 16 is dumb sometimes. You're fine. He half smiled. It is loud. Though. The bike. I grinned. That's the point. He laughed. Then got serious. It looks cool. My bad again. We're good, I said. You want to hear it? He hesitated like it was a trick. Then nodded. I fired the Harley and kept it gentle. His smile went full watt. He thanked me and jogged home. For a second, I saw the future of this neighborhood. Clearly, the part where kids learn what neighbors are supposed to be from the way we act right now. Look, I ain't a hero. I'm a guy who loves a machine. And that machine holds 30 memories for every bolt. I kept the bike, not because I needed to win, but because it wasn't hers to take. Because private property is not a community raffle prize. Because rules are promises, not weapons. I learned a few things worth sharing. And I mean, some of this sounds simple until you're in the thick of it. Document everything. Take photos. Save emails. Jot down dates in a little notebook. Even if your handwriting looks like a doctor's. Be polite when you want to scream. Use small words. Ask for the clause. Stay off the community page when your hands are shaking. There's power in being boring and correct. Show up. I know those folding chairs are uncomfortable, and the coffee tastes like burnt mud. But your voice in that room is the difference between one person's will and the neighborhood's choice. There's people who'd rather not be seen telling you what to do. Light helps. Lean on each other. Mrs. Alvarez's coffee cake is, legally binding. Kidding. But kindness builds a scaffold you can climb when you have to reach something tall. Like fairness. When neighbors stack their little stories, it turns into a picture the board can't ignore. And please, teach kids that a thing someone loves is never free because an adult with a title wants it. Teach them that promises are real, and so is the word no. These little battles with HOAs, paint colors, hedges, mailboxes. The occasional motorcycle feels small, but they stack up until folks stop believing they own their own doorways. Honestly, that's the part that gets me, not the letters or the fines. But the way fear makes good people quiet. The way a bully with a binder can make a neighborhood forget it's a neighborhood. So if you're in something like this right now, hear me, you're not crazy. You're not a troublemaker for wanting the rules to be actual rules. You don't have to hand over your Saturday, your joy, your mailbox, your bike, or your spine to appease someone who's decided the HOA is a crown. Be calm. Be clear. Bring receipts. Let the truth be heavy. And hey, tell me this. What would you do if a teenager walked into your driveway and tried to claim your motorcycle because his mom sits on the HOA board? Anyone else have a HOA? Try something like this. Noise. Courtesy. Fines that come out of nowhere. Drop your story below. I'll be in the comments. Coffee in hand. Listening. 'Cause the more we talk, the less they can turn our quiet into their power.